welcome to this episode of Chain Conversations. My name is Laura McQueen and I'm the MD here at Leaders. This season is part of a programme called the Leaders Meet Diversity series, which we've been running in partnership with Facebook for a couple of years now. Chain Conversation brings together leaders from a variety of backgrounds across professional sport to share their personal stories, to reflect on their own career journeys, pinpointing some peaks and troughs, some helps and hindrances along the way to share with you. The premise is simple, really. Person A picks person B to interview, person B picks person C to interview, and so on and so on. So over the course of the coming months, you'll really get exposed to quite a lot of independent personal journeys throughout the sports industry. The aim is to inspire you, to energise you, and to showcase why diverse thinking and diverse opportunity makes for a better business across sport and beyond. I really hope you enjoy it and speak to you soon.
Welcome to the next edition of the Leaders Chain Conversations. I am lucky enough to be joined today by Ms. Melissa Proctor, who is the CMO of the Atlanta Hawks. And I am Lenah Ueltzen-Gabell from Wasserman, and I am just happy to make this connection across the pond today, in this wild and wonderful world we're living in. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, let's jump right in. I mean, I think we were just chatting about this a bit, but I think the last plane that I got on was on March 9th, which is now we are fast closing into that being a year from that date. And the world has gone crazy since then. And I think we have all, as leaders in this industry, had to hold it together as moms and, supporters and friends and colleagues. Tell me a little bit about it. Like, what's your secret to success on this?
It's been a very interesting year for me as well. I have a 6-year-old daughter, my daughter Marley, so I have been a first grade teacher for the past year, in addition to a CMO. But, to be honest, it's been really interesting, personally. A lot of it has been being able to really build a schedule and stick to it and kind of build some consistency or some new norms in my life, just in working remotely, obviously. But from a professional standpoint, through the Atlanta Hawks, we've had one of the most interesting years ever, from being the first arena to open up our building for early voting here in Atlanta, and just the knowledge of what we've been able to execute, from launching a core uniform for the Hawks and a new strategy with our City Edition uniform in partnership with the King of State, with MLK. And so all of these things and amazing initiatives all happen with teams working remotely. And so it's been interesting to me just how productive we've been, while personally everyone is dealing with a lot. It's really speaks to our organization, our brand, our leadership, but it hasn't been without challenges. So I definitely won't say it's been easy, but we've really had to retool a lot of our business, especially because we are in the business of live events and bringing people together, which is the complete opposite of what the world is at the moment. Interesting things like our Hawks at Home platform, where we have gone from having physical camps and clinics all around our city to being 100% virtual. We've been able to really impact more youth with basketball skills and training over the past few months than we probably have over the past few years, just with the power of digital. But a lot of that is just learning, and it's happening every day, being able to be flexible.
It's amazing, right? I mean, I think from an industry that sort of has a way of doing things, and it's probably in my career, and probably yours as well, never been on its knees before. It's amazing. There've been some silver linings, right? I mean, I think the focus on virtual, the focus on reach, it's sort of all bets are off. And that's, I think there's been a real sort of collaboration amongst, all of us in it, saying, okay, what does this next frontier look like? And how do you feel about sort of what you guys have been able to do from this virtual perspective and reaching fans? Will you focus on that, bringing that forward into the next, sort of as we look to 21 and beyond?
Absolutely. It's been interesting because we have conversations about, what are the learnings throughout the pandemic? What things have shifted that should shift indefinitely? What things can we not wait to get back to? And so, for us, I would always say that having a physical activation and a virtual, counterpart is going to be critical for us as we move forward. And we've been able to do a lot, even within our merchandising team, from a brand perspective, and how we're able to partner and collab with other people. from a social influencer standpoint on the marketing side, I think we've made great strides, out of necessity, especially having, smaller budgets, but getting more creative with the team. It's been fantastic exploring new platforms. So getting on Clubhouse and, using other platforms in different ways. I think a lot of that will stick in the future, but I'm also very curious to see kind of how what sense of normalcy the world gets back to in the future, because I'm sure it won't be exactly what it was prior to, but I'm very curious to see.
I am as well. I mean, I think it's like, how things have changed after 9/11, and I think things will stick. The new normal is going to be a very different world. But, it's funny that you mentioned change, and we're all evolving, and we're doing this remotely, right? So everyone is a little bit out of their comfort zone. How did you find that sort of leading a team through this sort of this forced change, or also through crisis? I mean, I think, you end up wearing many hats, right? I mean, these people are your family of sorts, and we stay connected through this box. It's very hard.
Very much so. I'm a huge believer in family first and people first. And while obviously there's work to be done, if we're not okay personally, there's no way that we're going to be okay to execute any work. And so, early on, we had our team psychologists come into our organization and have a conversation with our teams. And I brought her into, our marketing group just to give people strategies to help them cope, and just having important conversations that had nothing to do with the business. Kind of putting people first has always been critical. But I think a lot of the events of last summer, especially from a social justice perspective, personally for myself, as well as many members of our team, we had real conversations with each other. And a lot of it was allowing people to share perspectives, ask questions, kind of trying to be non-judgmental, but really being open and having that communication and dialogue. And I think that makes a difference, because it takes you from just being colleagues to being people. And I really believe that, as a leader, that was incredibly important to me. And some of it is trial and error. I remember talking to some of my colleagues at other teams. I'm like, how do you get your teams excited? Like, I just feel like we're doing these same meetings over and over again. So we started having themes. One was 90s trivia, which my team tended to love. Then we started having themed, then we started having themed leadership meetings. So one was, a onesie meeting. So everybody had to dress in a onesie. One was a robe meeting, because someone came to a meeting wearing a robe, and like everyone in robe was like a meeting. And I think just that energy still kind of kept people connected. And that was really important.
Yeah, it really brought out the human side of people. Bizarrely, even though we were next to each other, we probably all know more about each other. So.
Well, I think my daughter has joined just about every Zoom meeting I've been on since the pandemic started. So people who didn't know her are like, hey, Marley, how are you? And that's the norm. But I really believe, like, you're in people's homes, like you're getting to see their families if you're traveling. And, a lot of that, when you're in a traditional work environment, you don't see. And I'm very big personally on authenticity and just bringing your whole self to work. So for me, I'm like, you're just going to get more of it. That's what it is.
That's great. I mean, you talk also a little bit about bringing your work home. Then comes the never-ending question, particularly as females, we sort of struggle with this balance, right? Work and home and kids and everything else. And how did you find that balance, with so much going on at work, to really preserve that sort of headspace at home and family time?
Well, one, I think there's no such thing as balance. I think we try to find harmony, because one time it's always going to be more on one side or the other. So when my daughter's having a hard day at school and I'm trying to help her, I may have to, bow out of a meeting or not put on my camera because I'm, trying to multitask and do two things, which a lot of women right now are dealing with, people in general, through the pandemic. But, for me, I got a Peloton over the past few months, which has helped a lot, because I really enjoy working out and wasn't comfortable going to a gym. So that's been my sanctuary in some ways. And now I'm a huge Peloton brand enthusiast. And I really just believe in creating boundaries. People talk about not having the ability to take time off because you're still home. And I'm like, absolutely not. And I've told my team, like, if you're on PTO, I will try to not at all disturb you if I can help it, but take your time and don't check in, don't check email. And it's hard because the lines are so blurred today, but really setting those boundaries, I think, are critical.
Yeah, no, I 1,000% agree. And I have heard also you've been quite busy on the personal front, right? You've actually found some time to work on your book. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Maybe 3 years ago, I decided that I was going to, write a book for my daughter. I would do a lot of speaking about my career. I started my career as a ball kid, mopping up sweat for the Miami Heat, became the first ball girl. that the Heat ever had as a team, called a team attendant after I started, to be politically correct. And just my journey throughout my career as an artist, and then working in basketball to ultimately getting a role at Turner Broadcasting. Was there for about 11 years, created different brands, did a lot of different types of things through the different brands at Turner. And so when I shared my story and my journey, people were like, oh, you should write a book. And so I said I was going to start blogging, just so it's somewhere on the internet. So if anything ever happened to me, my daughter would be able to search it one day and read it. And I said I was going to set a blog a month, and it probably was a year later, and I had maybe 6 entries, maybe 4. And so I always said, well, I'll kind of get to it. And one day I ran into a friend of mine who said, hey, you should meet this woman. She's a local publisher, amazing woman named Renita Bryant with Mind Matters Publishing. So we ended up having a lunch meeting, and I told her about my blog and my story. She's like, well, if you want to partner and really get this book done, let me know. So sat down with her, and I was so excited. I was like, yes, I'm gonna write a book. So she said, okay, let's do a chapter. How often? I was like, every 2 weeks, I'll write a chapter. A year passed, I probably had 4 chapters. And so I realized I needed more help. I needed more time. And to be honest, just with life and, being a mom and professional, I just never had the time. And so the pandemic really allowed me the time to sit back and say, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to approach it? And it was phenomenal. So within a couple of months, probably by mid 2020, I was able to, sit down, go through the editing process, find photography, do all these things. And ultimately by September, I was able to launch, my first book. It's called From Ball Girl to CMO. And it's been an amazing journey. I literally wrote it for my daughter. And so after it launched, the publisher said, okay, have you thought about marketing? I don't want to, I feel bad even asking if you're a CMO. And I was like, I have thought nothing about marketing because I was so focused on writing it for my daughter. But, the conversations that I've had, the people I've been able to meet, and the doors that have opened just through sharing kind of my testimony and my story, my hope is that it will help other people. My daughter still has no desire to read it. She's 6. So, hopefully we'll get there one day, but, it's been amazing.
Wow. I mean, I think that you could even carve out time, and that, but hey, you know what? It's amazing. The needs must. And I think with so much going on also around in the world, with social injustice and the time, and you being a real leader, the Black female, in a very high powered industry. I mean, I think this is great timing, and it was very authentic, right? Like you wrote it for the pure pleasure of writing it. And I think people will get so much from that, and I think, it's, as you talk about being authentic, I don't know what's more authentic than writing a book for yourself that is actually just so timely and can be something that, there are a lot of young people in our industry that need people to look up to, need to understand that what's possible.
Yeah, it was interesting because I would get so many requests, whether through LinkedIn or through my Instagram account, and saying, hey, we'd love to just grab coffee. I couldn't have that many coffee meetings if I wanted to. And so being able to write the book and just kind of share it, I was like, hey, I can try to put every lesson that I got that really helped just inform me along my journey that, led me to where I've been today. Obviously, everyone's story and path is going to be different, but there were tools in there. And I talk about my guiding principles for my life and my career and other things that really, I think, just help kind of solidify what it meant for me and hopefully would help others. But, it's so interesting because now people are like, oh my God, I read your book and I read it again. And I'm like, wow, this is it's awesome. Totally not at all what I expected. But at the same time, it was done, with love and with care. And even for myself, I have my father read it and he learned things about me that he didn't know. And just the questions that I had to ask of, people in my world to try to remember things that I saw as one way, like even the process of writing it was informative for me. But now that I've done it, people are like, so when is the next book? And I'm like, hey, you got one done. That's
You're like, when the next pandemic hits.
Exactly. I have no idea. Hopefully never in this lifetime.
Well, I mean, I will say, being that productive and with all this going on, I'm super hats off to you. So as we move forward, all right, we're looking in our crystal ball. Where do we think 21 is going to take us? I mean, personally, professionally, are you going to be able, I mean, is this going to be part of it? Maybe book 2? Or are you going to carve out time? Are there things that you're going to take away from what you've been able to achieve this year and looking forward personally and both professionally as an organization?
One of the things I say, and I say it in my book, is I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And if you asked me 6 years ago, would I be the CMO of an NBA team doing these things? I'd be like, I don't think so. But I would never say never. And so it's kind of how I feel about 21. I am so open to the process to where the universe or God guides me. So I feel like right now, I could have never in a million years imagined that the Pope would bless a jersey that, it was an idea that, I came up with for our team for this MLK City Edition uniform. But that happened this year. And that was, amazing. And so as we look to the future, for the rest of this NBA season and even beyond, I mean, I'm excited for what's to come, but I still think we're in a state of evolving just as people. We talked a little bit about the NBA itself, and my questions are, there's so many new, restrictions and rules that have been put in place to keep the players safe, to keep fans safe, to keep our teammates safe. And I wonder things like, will fans ever be able to high five a player, coming in and out of the tunnel? And things that are as small or simple as that, just from a safety perspective. You mentioned 9/11 earlier, just how much it changed the travel industry and the things that we knew or expected as normal. And so for those things, I really think hopefully this year, once we can get some sense of what this herd immunity looks like and people can get vaccinated and really understand where the future is in regards to the pandemic, I wonder how that's going to relate back to the world that, we work within sports and entertainment.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And yeah, I mean, some change is good and some change we just have to live with, right? And make, and we, with our eyes on the fans and our, an eye on the industry and what's important. So, I think that's all we can do is we're building the plane while we're flying it, right now.
I think about wearing a mask at the beginning of the pandemic. People are like, I could never wear a mask all day. And now it's so much of the norm, and all of the new businesses that have been able to be created just based on this new economy of, where we are, people who are used to getting things delivered to them now because they're not comfortable leaving their house. And so I love when innovation, is shaken, and business is shaken just based on the context of the world. And so I think there's so much more of that to happen, and that's exciting.
Yeah, and I think building on that, like the lanes are not so clear anymore, right? Like, sports is not sports, and sports can actually be a means for good and justice and be used as a community tool. I mean, that digital to innovation, everything, it's sort of the lines are blurred as far as what everyone's roles are, and I think the collaboration probably is at its highest, right? I mean, I think I see that continuing, but you as the CMO of the Atlanta Hawks, do you really see that? I was amazed by the power of the NBA this summer, and I really I'm just hoping that continues. But I hope that I'm assuming that that's part of your roadmap as well.
100%. I mean, for us as an organization, when we released our City Edition uniform, we've been working on that for the past 3 years. So it's truly a part of our brand DNA. Everything from a social justice standpoint, having amazing ownership that really believe in economic empowerment for people of color, and kind of putting time, effort, and dollars and resources towards that effort. This is something that we have been doing since I came into the organization, and I truly believe will be a part of our future moving forward.
That's fantastic. Well, I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I really thank you for taking time with us. And, I look forward to tuning in to the next Chain conversation and, and hopefully meeting you in person very soon.
That would be awesome. Thank you for having me. And if anybody is interested in learning more about the book, my website is melissambproctor.com, or follow me on Instagram at melissamproctor. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.